As the White House goes into full damage control, Donald Trump's national security advisor says the president's disclosure to Russian officials was wholly appropriate. But how much will former FBI Director James Comey's memos reveal? A cholera outbreak compounds the hunger crisis in southern Somalia. And preparing for the domestic rise of the robots. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. Tonight we begin with two major stories. A devastating cycle of drought, hunger, and now an outbreak of cholera has plunged Somalia into a major humanitarian crisis, and millions of people are on the verge of famine. Our in-depth report on the situation is only minutes away. But first, we begin with a firestorm engulfing the White House following a bombshell revelation that President Trump may have asked the then FBI Director James Comey to drop the agency's probe into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. A powerful Republican Congressional Committee chairman has asked the FBI to hand over Comey's notes on the incident within a week. In a letter to Acting Director Andrew McCabe, House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz demanded that all material involving Comey and Trump be made available to the committee by May 24th. The New York Times broke the story late Tuesday, reporting that Comey had written a memo detailing his conversation with Trump a day after Flynn resigned under fire last February.
If necessary, I think we should subpoena them. But hopefully we can obtain any of these materials voluntarily. But on the heels of an allegation that the President himself acknowledged that he brought up in the context of whether the Director would stay on as Director, whether he was a subject of investigation, in the context of reports by the Director or associates of the Director that he was asked essentially for a loyalty test to the President. And now with allegations that the President urged him to essentially drop the investigation of Michael Flynn, enough is enough.
Well, the White House issued a statement Tuesday evening denying that Trump had asked Comey or anyone else to end the Flynn probe. It is the latest controversy plaguing the Young administration, which has also been dealing with the fallout of a report suggesting that Trump divulged sensitive information during an earlier meeting with Russian officials last week. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin says President Donald Trump never passed any classified information to Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov when they met last week in Washington, and he has the transcripts to prove it. Now, speaking Wednesday in Italy, Putin said Lavrov never passed the purported secrets on to him, and he would be happy to hand over the transcripts of the conversation. For a better understanding of this controversy, VOA national correspondent Jim Malone joins me. Jim, now the White House is obviously in crisis. How serious is this situation right now as you assess it?
It's pretty serious, and they can't even take a moment for a breath because they've been lurching from one crisis to another for the past week, beginning with the president's decision to fire the FBI Director Jim Comey. Then we get into this issue with, did he leak classified information to the Russians in an Oval Office meeting? And of course, lately, as you've just noted, these concerns about reports that the president had asked Comey, when he was still FBI director, to go easy on Michael Flynn when the investigation was ongoing. This has plunged the White House into crisis mode, and now that's spreading to Capitol Hill, Congress, where divides are coming out among Democrats and Republicans about what to do next. But it's clearly headed in the realm of gathering more information, and I think we will expect to see the former FBI Director Comey testify at some point, and that will set up a one-on-one, whose word do you take, between Comey and the president.
And talking about that, of course, there have been suggestions that perhaps there were recordings at the White House during Comey and Trump meetings, and now we're hearing about these transcripts of the meeting that were put together by Comey himself. What could be the most explosive thing that can come out of this too?
Well, the Democrats, for example, in their request for more information, they also want a special counsel to investigate the Russia ties with the Trump campaign. But they are demanding of the White House to turn over any tapes, transcripts of meetings that the White House may have involving these various officials. The White House has been pressed for days following the president's tweet about Comey better be careful because there might be recordings. They haven't confirmed anything. They have nothing further to say on that.
Do you get the sense that this situation was escalated by the president following up the firing by explaining why he did it, by saying he had asked him some questions before regarding whether he was being investigated or not?
At the heart of all of this is the president's behavior, his comments, his tweets. I'm reading today about a key question here, which is the president's credibility. This comes on the eve of his first international trip to the Middle East and Europe, where these questions are going to follow him as he goes on his foreign travels.
And now people are looking at these two things, the president, the White House, and then the Republican Party. How challenging is it at this moment for the Republican Party to stand behind the president?
It's shifting hour to hour. Even today, I watched some quick interviews with House members, Republicans, senators. In the Senate, it's a little bit more of a push to get more information, to move toward more discovery of what may be going on. Some of the House Republicans are saying we still stand with the president and this is all overblown. But here's the point, Vincent, right now. I think it's blowing out of control of both the White House and congressional Republicans, and someone's going to have to get a handle on this fairly soon.
And, you know, somebody thought, the Russia issue could just stay down and as it is being investigated. But what do you make of the fact that now the issue of possible leaks, or rather sharing of information, has come up again, has come up as a big
From day one, the president has expressed the desire for this to go away. Everything he has done in recent months is going to ensure it's not going to go away, and it's going to be around probably for a long time, and it could threaten sort of the heart of his presidency at this point.
All right. Jim, in very few words, what is it that the president can do on his foreign trip that could possibly temper a little bit?
Best thing would be to change the subject and get them talking about foreign policy goals and his own domestic agenda.
Well, we'll be looking at that. Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
As always, for your insights. Well, that's our VOA national correspondent, Jim Malone. Now, Donald Trump's national security advisor says it was wholly appropriate for the president to share sensitive national security information with Russia's ambassador and foreign minister during a meeting last week. That defense comes amid a firestorm of bipartisan criticism in Washington. Here's VOA's Bill Gallo.
A White House in damage control after a bombshell report claiming that President Donald Trump shared highly classified information about an Islamic State terror plot. The disclosure reportedly came during a meeting with Russian officials last week at the White House. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster acknowledged that Trump shared the info, but downplayed its importance.
It was nothing that you would not know from open source reporting in terms of a source of concern.
McMaster also said the disclosure was completely legal.
It's wholly appropriate for the president to share whatever information he thinks is necessary to advance the security of the American people. That's what he did.
What he didn't say was whether Trump intended to share the information or whether the info slipped out while boasting about the great intel he receives, as the reports allege. In a tweet, Trump said he has the absolute right to share information for national security or humanitarian reasons. But many in Congress are not satisfied with that answer.
If the reporting is accurate, in one fell swoop, the president could have unsettled our allies, emboldened our adversaries, endangered our military and intelligence officers world over, and exposed our nation to greater risk.
What the president did was totally outrageous. Totally outrageous. If it was unwitting, that would be pathetic and dangerous. If it was intentional, that would even be, I don't know what's worse.
Another concern, that allies could be less likely to share sensitive info with the U.S.
If the president in this circumstance chose to share information from a third-party intelligence service that was provided to the United States with the understanding that it would not be supplied to another power, that could well complicate intelligence sharing relationships down the line.
Late Tuesday, reports emerged that Israel was the source of the information Trump disclosed. That could make things awkward next week when Trump meets Israeli officials during his first overseas trip as president. A trip designed in part to help change the rocky narrative of a new administration. Now that trip risks being overshadowed by yet another controversy. Bill Gallo, VOA News, the White House.
Well, now to our other major story. The regional drought has displaced over 500,000 people in Somalia and left the country at risk of famine. A cholera outbreak is further complicating relief efforts, in particular in the southern part of the country, where some villages remain under Al-Shabaab control. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Baidoa.
5-year-old Fatuma was admitted to the hospital after experiencing stomach pain, vomiting and diarrhea. Her mother says she can't lose another child.
My eldest daughter was suffering from diarrhea, and she died 2 months ago in the Busli village on the outskirts of Baidoa. I left my youngest daughter at home. I am the mother of 3. My deceased daughter was 7 years old.
Aid agencies say the areas worst hit by cholera and hunger are villages like Busli, which are under Al-Shabaab control. Accessing them is a challenge. Tens of thousands of people have walked to government-controlled areas like Baidoa to seek help. Somalia has reported more than 40,000 cases of cholera since January. More than half the cases have been in this part of the country, the southwest federal state. And according to the World Health Organization, most of the cholera victims have been malnourished children. Health workers say rains this month in southern and central Somalia have contributed to a fresh surge in cholera cases. At this hospital, the biggest in the region, a special ward treats dozens of patients weak from disease.
It's like when the cholera outbreak started and we had many patients. Last week we were hopeful about 5 patients would come, but now between 8 a.m. and noon every morning we get at least 16 new patients. The situation is getting worse.
More than 150,000 displaced people are now living in makeshift camps around the town, and more continue to arrive. Clean water is available, but it's not enough. Medics supported by UNICEF and the WHO are going around in the camps to provide oral cholera vaccination. At the main hospital, people continue to arrive seeking treatment. Nationwide, between 200 and 300 cases of cholera are being reported every day. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Baidoa, Somalia.
Well, the head of the U.S. Pacific Command warned Wednesday that the combination of ballistic missiles and nuclear warheads in the hands of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un represents a recipe for disaster. At the United Nations Tuesday, U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, warned that any country that helps North Korea in building a nuclear weapons arsenal could face sanctions themselves.
When we are talking about sanctions, are these countries putting these sanctions into effect? Are these countries actually following through on the sanctions that they're supposed to? We want to look at the current sanctions in place, and we want to look at strengthening the sanctions. And the United States is not past looking at third country entities who are helping North Korea and putting sanctions on them. Because if you are supporting North Korea, you're against the rest of the international community.
Well, Haley spoke ahead of a closed meeting of the United Nations Security Council held by the United States and Council member Japan, along with South Korea, to discuss Pyongyang's Sunday launch of a mid to long-range missile that traveled some 800 kilometers before landing in the sea west of Japan. Now, the U.S. Army soldier who gave more than 700,000 classified military and diplomatic documents to WikiLeaks in 2010 is due to be freed from prison on Wednesday after serving 7 years of a 35-year sentence. Lawyers for Chelsea Manning and the Army have not made public the time of her release from the Fort Leavenworth military prison due to security concerns. Now, the former intelligence analyst in Iraq, known at the time as Bradley Manning, was convicted in 2013 of leaking the secret military and State Department documents and battlefield video. Her conviction on 20 counts, including violations of the Espionage Act, remains in place. Her sentence was reduced by former President Barack Obama before leaving office in January. Manning came out as a transgender after being sentenced. Her lawyers say Manning was subjected to violence in prison and attempted suicide twice last year. Well, in other news, I recently asked our Africa 54 social media followers to tell me whether a colonial mentality still is undermining the future of Africa, and if so, why? We received a lot of thoughtful answers, and I want to share some with you. So let's begin. Abdul Aziz Ibrahim from Jega in Nigeria says emphatically, yes, because the colonial master failed to understand the cultural differences of African societies, and this is the cause of various tribal and religious conflicts in Africa today. Ambassador Dan Amakor in Owerri, Aba, also in Nigeria, agrees. Yes, he says, if we drop the anachronistic colonial mentality and come up with a better 21st century approach, the outcome will be an unimaginable development. Sami Mading from Rumbek in South Sudan points out that some African countries are using English as their first language and others French. This is a colonial mentality, and it's hurting the African continent. Finally, Machadkar Stars from Mogadishu, Somalia, also agrees. Of course, he says the worst thing is lack of confidence, believing that one has to depend on others, and bad leaders will discourage their people. Well, thank you very much for your responses, and please keep them coming. Our next question is, do you think the Nigerian government is doing enough to find the missing Chibok girls? Go to Facebook. The address is Africa54, and tell me what you think. Or send me a tweet at VOA Vince McCory. Well, we want to know what you think about Africa54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends also. And check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Coming up, computers on the continent are seen as vulnerable following global virus attack. Stay with us.
Health news and notes. This is Living Better.
Postpartum hemorrhage is a leading cause of maternal death worldwide. Now, a global study of 20,000 women suggests 1/3 of these deaths could be prevented with tranexamic acid, or TXA, a drug developed in Japan in the 1960s. London School of Hygiene clinical researcher Halima Shakur.
Anemia is a risk factor for postpartum hemorrhage. So women are going into their pregnancies already anemic, they start to bleed, and they can't afford to lose any blood.
TXA stops severe bleeding and is already used for trauma patients. To be effective for mothers, the drug should be administered within 3 hours of giving birth.
You can save lives, you can reduce the need for operation, and without increases in side effects.
Researchers say that TXA should be the primary treatment to reduce the alarming numbers of women who die in childbirth. I'm Martin Seacrest for VOA's Living Better.
I am Shaka Sali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Well, in Wednesday's business news, look at how Brexit is impacting Kenya's tea trade and what the potential silver lining is for Africa. Joining us from New York is Africa54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino. Hello, Jill.
Hi, good morning. So an industry performance report by the Tea Directorate indicates the volume purchased by Britain dropped from 5.4 million kilograms in March 2016 to 3.1 million kilograms in the same month this year. The Directorate indicates that Britain is no longer buying the same amount of tea from Kenya due to a reduced re-exportation market to other European countries who have been securing the commodity from the UK.
The question is, will other sectors be impacted here?
Well, Kenya is at risk for a surge in capital outflows. Trade deals on its exports, including cut flowers, for example, are likely to become more complicated. Kenya will have to negotiate new deals with the UK. Significant losses may have to be absorbed while the UK economy navigates Brexit. Hopefully it doesn't come to a recession for the UK. As for Nigeria, its primary source of foreign direct investment, or FDI, in 2015 was the UK. Projected figure of 20 billion in pounds in bilateral trade by 2020 will have have to be revised downwards. But I think many of these fears could be unfounded. The post-Brexit UK might find itself with more freedom to take ownership of its decisions when it comes to Africa.
So what is the silver lining here?
Well, I think this could be a positive awakening for the continent. Just look at how East and West Africa have turned to interdependency. The African states harbor the potential to transform the trade between themselves in truly remarkable ways. All this infrastructure connecting the major business centers will make it easier for Africans to trade amongst each other. And if there's one thing I've learned while covering business on the continent, no one is more resourceful and entrepreneurial than Africans. So I think it may take some time to realize the potential as an interdependent unit of economies, but it is essential for growth that maximizes the benefits each state gains for the continent's economic prosperity.
I hope they're listening, because Africa is such a huge continent. All the resources are there and the manpower. They can do great things. Thanks a lot, Jill.
Yes.
That's Africa 54 business correspondent Jill Malandrino reporting live from New York. Now, cybersecurity experts warn that hundreds of thousands of computer users across the globe remain vulnerable following a large-scale virus attack in recent days. The so-called ransomware virus struck governments and companies worldwide. Henry Ridgewell reports from London.
Britain's National Health Service was one of the biggest organisations to be hit. Even urgent treatments were delayed and patients felt the impact.
They can't do the operation.
Yeah, they can't do the operation
because all the computers are down.
The computers are down. So
and what they're doing is disgusting.
The virus targets computers running outdated Microsoft Windows XP software, says James Tedman of Cybersecurity Risk Advisors ACA Aponix.
It's still present in a large number of organisations, a large number of homes across the globe. In fact, whilst the number of Windows XP machines in the US is only 2%, if we look at regions such as Africa and Asia, the numbers are much higher. In Africa, I believe they're up to around 11% of machines.
Russia's Interior Ministry was badly affected, while in France, production was halted at a Renault car factory. In Japan, technology giant Hitachi and car maker Nissan were hit. Across the globe, thousands of individuals also appear to have been affected by the virus, a type of ransomware called WannaCry. The virus locks users' files and demands $300 to have them released.
This is analogous to the burglar coming and going, I can't see any worth here to myself to sell on, but actually what I can do is I can put all these knickknacks and personal photos in a box, put a strong padlock on it, and actually that means that when the person comes home, they're going to see that all your items in a box, padlocked up, with a note, pay the ransom, and I'll unlock the box for you.
The spread of the virus appears to have been halted after a British cybersecurity expert managed to inadvertently trigger a so-called kill switch. The expert advice: update your software and target the weakest link, the users.
Make sure they understand how these viruses get in the system, be it browsing poorly chosen sites or opening spam emails and virused emails.
The financial cost of ransomware is huge and growing every year.
The FBI have described it as the largest crime wave in modern history. It was a $1 billion industry last year. So this is really, really big business. Very unlikely to be going away anytime soon. And in fact, the likelihood is it's only going to get worse.
Experts warn the stereotype of a lone teenager hacker has been replaced by sophisticated criminal gangs targeting millions of users. Henry Ridgewell for VOA News, London.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The future is now at the Paris Robot Show. We'll be right back.
But it's important that you always
Wherever you are, Voice of America is on air, reaching more than 130 million weekly, worldwide, in more than 40 languages. Online, social media, and breaking news from around the world. On the go, dozens of new features on popular platforms with new apps and trending topics. Voice of America, on air, online, on the go.
I wanted to present music and a side of American culture that is most important to me, that is a part of who I am. They're going to get some incredible performances. That's one of the things I love, bringing these artists in so you can get to see them do what they do. It's soul music, and that's what music is. It's that which comes from the soul.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here's what's trending. It's the goal of many Chinese teenagers like these to be accepted to top universities overseas. And they're preparing for the chance to be admitted earlier and earlier by leaving China for high school in the United States. With more than 300,000 of its students in U.S. colleges and graduate schools, China has long been the top supplier of international students in America. Last fall, the U.S. issued over 31,000 F1 student visas to Chinese youth planning to attend American high schools, up from just 639 in 2005. Chinese students find the education in the United States more flexible, where they can study the subjects that really interest them. Well, next up, the popularity of voice assistant devices like Amazon's Echo is bringing greater automation into homes. But are tech fans ready to go one step further and welcome actual robots into their lives? At the annual Paris Robotics event in Robo, exhibitors are showcasing ready-to-use automation for homes, stores, even hospitals, meaning perhaps it's now man that is in need of some development. In Robo Robotics events run through May the 18th. And finally, despite over 6 years of war in Syria, local businesses haven't stopped wanting to improve the daily lives of residents with modern technology. Like the Uber taxi service, the Mala mobile app is now available in Syria, mainly in the capital Damascus and the northern city of Aleppo. The company's founder says the service is targeted at those who like modern technology and want to use apps for ordering a taxi, and those who are searching for cheaper taxi prices. And that is what is trending today. And that's our show for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. We always hope for the best possible result or outcome. But what is the best way to use this expression?
Best of both worlds. How do you like biking to work?
Oh, I love it. It's fun, and I actually get to work faster.
Wow. It seems like biking is the best of both worlds. It's fun and